Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Morris. I'm the Executive Director at the Museum Association of Saskatchewan. Thank you for all of you for being here with us today. I'm going to start with a brief land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to introduce our speakers for the community chat today. So we are gathering today from all over the province. Our office is based in Regina on
Oh, Emma, I think you've muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to start over. I don't think that was me that did that, but so yes, we're joining today from all over the place, but the Museum Association of Saskatchewan's offices are on Treaty 4 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis. MASS's work reaches lands covered by Treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, currently known as the province of Saskatchewan. These areas are comprised of the territories of the Nehiyawak, Anishinaabe, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Michif, and Dakota nations. MASS recognizes the roles of museums in perpetuating colonial practices in Canada, both directly and indirectly, through collection and display practices, policy, and harmful rhetoric. We commit to building meaningful relationships based in trust. We dedicate our efforts to working together in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation. We are all treaty people. Now it is my pleasure to welcome our speakers for today. We have Tomasin Playford, Leo Keiser, and Abiodun joining us from SaskCulture. So they are here to talk about the museum grant program. I believe they are going to do a full outline of the eligibility criteria, how to use the online grant program, the application overview and some assessment considerations, as well as some budget tips and Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to hand that over to Tomasin and your team.
Thank you so much, Emma. And thank you very much for having us here today. Very happy to be presenting this information to the museums that we have with us. And I just want to let you know we are being recorded, and so this recording will be available on the MAS YouTube video shortly. I am going to ask that if you have any questions to put them in the chat box, and we will get to them at the end. There is quite a bit of information here, so I just want to make sure I get through it all. Hopefully it doesn't take the whole hour. If it does, I'm more than happy to stay on and answer questions for a little bit after the 1 o'clock time period. So there we go. Thank you, Emma, for the acknowledgement. I too just want to acknowledge that we're gathering on the traditional territories of Indigenous people, that we are all treaty people, and that we do need to work individually and collectively to move forward in the spirit of reconciliation. I think this is very timely as we observe National Truth and Reconciliation Week at the end of September, and we are marking that 10th anniversary of the release of the TRC's report and call to action. So this is a time for reflection, recognition, and that recommitment. A lot has happened and there has been progress, but there's still a long way to go. And museums in the cultural sector play a vital role for providing that space for truth-telling, challenging those colonial narratives, to collaborating with Indigenous communities, and the returning of cultural belonging to those Indigenous communities. So just a little bit about what you can expect today is we're going to do a brand new video about SaskCulture. So happy it dropped in my inbox this morning, so you don't have to listen to me the entire time. We've got a great little animation giving that background information about SaskCulture. Then we're going to introduce Team MGP, so myself, Leo, and Abiodun. But most of this presentation is going to focus in on the museum grant program information, including things like the funding cycle, streams and deadlines, eligibility, some of the selected application questions, specifically ones that have been changed from last time, as well as the budget and tips. I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about our new accessibility fund, and then conclude with some resources and all three of our contact. So that will be the last slide available to you. We'll have our information on it. So let's see if the video works.
Film is muted. It seems the video is muted.
Oh, can you not hear us?
Thomasin, I can't hear it either. This happened to me yesterday when I was sharing a video. You have to, when you do
Share
the
the
share
sound.
screen, you have to share sound. Yeah, it's a separate box to tick.
Okay, so where would that, just give me 1 minute then, please. Oh, wait,
Just-
there we go. I got it.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start over. There we go. Thank you for letting me know about that. Sorry, it's just buffering on my end here.
Well, I can see quite well.
The sound is still not coming out.
I still don't have sound.
Okay. I think we will just skip that then, unfortunately. And just share with you, SaskCulture is we're a nonprofit cultural-based organization here in Saskatchewan. We work with our communities, with our members and volunteers, essentially to offer the cultural activities for vibrant life here for everyone in Saskatchewan. This is due to the funding from the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sport, Culture and Recreation that SaskCulture delivers the funding of that lottery system to the sector. And if there's anything you take away today, one thing I want you to remember is that the MGP is funded through the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund and delivered via SaskCulture. So keep that in mind. And next time I'll make sure that sound works on the video. So a little bit about myself. My name is Tomasin, outreach consultant on this program. I'm originally from Brandon, Manitoba, so in Treaty 2 territory, and I have background in archaeology. So I studied that at Brandon, studied it again in Saskatoon, and then again in Winnipeg, so lots of archaeology. I served as the executive director for the Saskatchewan Archaeological Society for about a decade before coming into this position over just about a year ago. So I definitely come with that experience and understanding as a grant seeker and have learned a lot in this last year about helping organizations access funding. And that's my role here, is really to help the museum grant program, but a couple of other grant programs in delivering that funding. I am based out of a home office in Saskatoon, and my general office hours are Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 4:30. I do usually take about a half an hour for lunch. And I want you to know, if you cannot access me during that time, like if you need to have an after hours phone call or consultation or something on the weekend, I'm more than willing to arrange that with you. So you can always just reach out to me, send me an email, and we can set up a time if those business hours don't work for you. I do also want to let everybody know that I do have some limited availability coming up at the end of this month. So starting next week from Monday to Friday, I will be very limited in my ability for phone calls, though I will have email access. And then the following week, I will be away on annual leave, so I'm not available that last week of October. Terry Lee Hislop, who was the outreach consultant in this program during the last intake, has very graciously agreed to field any really urgent burning questions during that time period. Preferably, you can wait till I come back and I can address them, but if you have something that just has to be answered in that time period, you can reach out to her. Again, my role is really assisting with kind of general content, questions about the program, questions about your application content. We do have a couple of other fantastic team members with us today, and I'll turn it over to Leo to talk about themselves.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see some folks. I know I've been emailing with a few of you already. So hello. My name is Leo Keiser. I'm a grants administrator with SaskCulture. I've been with SaskCulture for a little over a year in this position now, but I have a fairly long background in arts administration with galleries, festivals, music administration, that sort of thing. My availability has a little bit of flex to it, but generally I'm accessible Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. and I'm here to help support the Stream 1 museums with technical support. So if you've got any challenges or any troubles with the online grant platform, please reach out. Email or phone call is just as good for me. And if you've got some, similarly to Tomasin, if you've got a tech issue and the only time that will work for you is after my office hours, I think we can arrange a quick chat to figure out what's going on. So we know that the tech can be a bit of a strain and a challenge for some folks, and we're here to help you through it. So truly, any tech challenges at all, please just get in touch. And that's me. Thanks, Tomasin.
Thanks so much, Leo. Abiodun.
Good afternoon. Good to see us all, and it's nice to be here as well. My name is Abiodun Oyelami. You can just call me Abiodun for short, or just Habi if that's more preferable for you. So I have a background in international law and diplomacy, and also languages, international languages, where I used to be before I joined SaskCulture. So I work with the Saskatchewan Association of International Languages. So I'm the grant administrator for the MGP, which is Museum Grant Program, and also the Multicultural Initiative Fund, and also the Northern Youth. Also, I'm in Regina, so feel free to reach out anytime. I'm at work basically from Mondays to Fridays. You can get a hold of me from 8 to 4, or even sometimes I am around till 4:30. I'm the grant administrator for the MGP Stream 2 and 3. So if you have any technical difficulties, you just reach out. We're here to support you. We're here to be of help to you as much as we are able to. So please feel free to reach out, and we'll be here to give you our best of support and ensure that you have a smooth, you ensure that you have a smooth application process. So I think that's it. We're here just waiting for you to reach out to us, and myself and Leo will be of great assistance to you. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the presentation. Over to you, Tomasin.
Thank you so much. Yes, I did want to reiterate, the last thing we want is people having any frustrations with technology or trying to answer the question. So please reach out to us. I will remind you at the end of the presentation. But our role is really to help you put your best foot forward. And the last thing we want is you being frustrated or not able to complete something. So reach out as soon as you're having issues, and we'll work at getting those resolved for you. And with that, we'll get right into things. For several of these slides, I have a lot of the content on the slide, so I'm not going to repeat them verbatim. You can read the information, and I will provide a PDF to the Museums Association if they want to distribute it to individuals. You can reach out either to me directly or to the MAS for a PDF copy. But essentially, this grant program really is about supporting community museums that are valued and supported by society so that they can be excellent in their programs and operations. We recognize that museums are essential for us to understand our place in the world, our past, our present, and our future. And this is done by supporting applicants who demonstrate the 4 key areas. So looking for strong governance and strategic development, valued programming, community connections, and that responsible use of resources and risk management practices. And you can get a lot of this information, of course, from the museum standards and guidelines, which has links throughout the online application to a digital version of that document if you don't have a print copy. This program does have priorities, and so the priorities for the program in this round are the following: is that equitable distribution of funds across the province, especially for people living in rural or northern areas. Also looking for increased participation opportunities for First Nations, Métis, young people and newcomers. Working at supporting museums that are implementing the United Nations declarations on the rights of Indigenous people and those that are supporting Indigenous self-determination in museums, as well as Indigenous ethnocultural or multicultural museums. So we do follow the International Council of Museums on definition for a museum. You can read it here. Essentially, it's that place where people can come, that's open, inclusive, that operates effectively, and offers that variety of educational enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. So that's very much a kind of a typical building-based museum definition, which a lot of our museums are. We do also support eco-museums, and those are those unique ways of exploring and experiencing cultural and natural heritage of a place that doesn't necessarily mean about collecting objects or being in a building. It integrates kind of the intangible and the tangible, so things like personal accounts or traditional practices, often along with things like artifacts or structures. And eco-museums really emphasize that community participation, so they're really about community, as well as local development and sustainability. We also support virtual museums, which are somewhat self-explanatory. They're the ones that have digital content, such as videos, images, that are shared through some type of virtual means. It could be often online, either in a website or social media or a blog or something like an online. So those are the museum types that we fund. A little bit about our cycle, because I know it can sometimes get a little confusing when we're in between years or when your fiscal year straddles a year. But essentially right now, we're at the very end of our current cycle, which is 2024 and 25. And the application is for our next funding cycle, which is your fiscal 2026 and 2027. Applications are due here coming up. So stream 2 and 3 are due November 10th, and I will repeat this. Stream 1s are due December 1st. They are assessed by volunteer group of peer assessors, and adjudications are made, results are known, and those results will be communicated in the spring of 2026, which will be your year 1 of that cycle, and then the second year is 2027. So the funding for those who are successful will be delivered once the notifications are delivered in the spring of 2026. And then to get your 2027 funding, what happens is you have to submit a follow-up report 3 months after your year 1 fiscal end. So just kind of went through that process this last year, and essentially that releases your year 2 funding. And so a little bit about the 3 museum streams. So we do have these 3 streams, and you are required to pick a stream to apply to. Each stream has a separate application in our online grant platform that I'll talk about in a little bit. You can see the information here on your screen. I'm not going to repeat it verbatim, but just note that Stream 1 museums do not require matching funding. So you can be funded up to $5,000. These tend to be smaller museums with a smaller budget range. They often don't have staff. And then Stream 2 and Stream 3 museums do require a 50% matching fund. So up to $15,000 for Stream 2 or $30,000 for Stream 3. And again, you can kind of see a typical budget range there for those museums. I do want to note that this is a very competitive grant program. So there is always far more in requests than we have funding for. So you may receive full funding or partial funding, or potentially no funding. And that really depends on how you've answered the application questions, and then how those answers are compared to other museums. So you really want to be strategic about first selecting the appropriate stream. And then, because Stream 2 and 3 are more competitive, they have more questions, they require more information on their questions, which I'll talk about also shortly. So they do have some additional requirements, but you also want to make sure that your grant amount request is realistic. Because any unreturned grant funds in your fiscal year do need to be returned to SaskCulture. So if you're applying to a Stream 2 museum or even in Stream 1 and you don't spend all of your funding in that year, you do have to return that unspent money before we can release your year 2. And then just remember for Stream 2 and 3, you do have to have that matching fund for eligible expenses. So any new museum also needs to start at Stream 1. So whatever type of museum you are, if you're new into this grant program, you begin in Stream 1. And then if you're interested in moving between streams, if you're interested in going up a stream, or even if you're interested in going down a stream, just reach out and let us know. It helps us kind of keep track of how many museums we can talk to you about, the benefits of going up or down and your individual situation. So something to keep in mind if you're interested in moving between streams. And I do have the deadlines listed there on the bottom. So Stream 2 and 3 deadline application is coming up in just under a month. And then Stream 1 museums have about almost 8 weeks. So do you want to get working on those applications? So in terms of eligibility, we do have kind of 2 main areas of museum eligibility, 2 main types. One is the nonprofit museum. So this is one that's registered as a Saskatchewan nonprofit for at least 1 full fiscal year. Does have to have a primary mandate as defined by SaskCulture's cultural policy or demonstrate cultural activity. It is also imperative that the museum be in good standing with Information Services Corporations. That's your nonprofit status. So you have to make sure you filed your ISC forms. Or you can also be a museum that's been established through municipal bylaw or band council. And in that case, it's the municipality or the First Nations that's financially responsible for the museum. If you're new to the program, you are required, I should say, we don't just ask, it's a requirement that you provide a copy of that bylaw or that resolution to us. Or if there's been any real significant changes in those bylaws, we do ask that you update that with us. You can just email that to myself or to the GA for that program. There's lots of eligible organizations, but there are a few who just aren't eligible. And that is any museum that's part of a federal or a provincial operation or a crown corporation. So they are not eligible for this funding, or museums that receive directed funding from the government of Saskatchewan. So things like the Western Development Museum or Saskatchewan Museum are not eligible. We also, organizations that are receiving operational funding from the culture section of the Sask Lotteries Trust Fund is not eligible, or museums that are receiving more than 50% from the Sask Lotteries Trust Fund from another source. So this could be SaskCulture, but it could also be through the community grant program or other funding streams. One exception there is Stream 1 museums, of course, because you are allowed to be 100%. It is important that you do not have any outstanding follow-up reports with SaskCulture. I think most museums have completed their MGP follow-up reports, but if for some reason you have an outstanding follow-up report with SaskCulture, that precludes you from applying to this next application round. So if you're outstanding, get in touch with me and we'll work on getting you compliant. So just a little bit about what you can expect in the application. So the areas of questioning is around things like activity and impact. We asked some questions around welcoming and inclusive museums, Indigenous objects and materials, and reconciliation, as well as risk management, as well as requiring a budget and some budget notes. So for Stream 1, these are your application areas, and then we do require your most recent financial statement to be uploaded. And this is just a reminder to everybody, anytime you're uploading financial documents for SaskCulture, we require 2 signatures. So I think this is one of the things that I'm always going back to successful grant people is that second signature on your financial document. So just, if you can remember to get 2 decision makers to sign it. So this would be 2 board members if you're a nonprofit museum, or a board member and a member of either the municipality or the First Nation if you're that type of museum. Now for stream 2 and 3 applicants, the areas are still the same, like the sections are still the same, but we do require more information and we require additional examples. So the application is detailed and it is longer. There are also additional required documentation. So including that financial statement from your most recent fiscal year, stream 2 and 3 museums do have to provide us with a strategic plan or some kind of equivalent document showing that they're looking at the direction of the museum over the short and long term, as well as a copy of your collections policy. And then the completed form is a budget download that I'll talk about in a minute. That's just a little bit different from stream 1 museums. And we do require communication examples for stream 2 and 3 museums. So you can see a little bit of the difference. The sections are the same, but expecting more from those stream 2 and 3 museums. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or just hold them till the end. We just want to make sure we get through this information, and sometimes questions might be answered later on in the presentation. But keep us on our toes. So what I'm going to go over here is the application, and I'm just going to touch on a few of the questions. I'm not going through the entire application. We do ask some general questions about your museum, the story, your community, some questions around when you're open, how many visitors you have. But what I'm going to focus on here is the example questions. So you are asked for examples of governance, programming, and collections, and how you're meeting the museum standards. And this is where you can really share that story of your museum and why it's important. How did you identify the need? And sometimes these answers we get in these sections can just be 1 or 2 sentences. And that doesn't necessarily provide the level of detail, the who, what, when, where, how, but also really important, the impact, the why. Remember, this is the information that the volunteer peer assessors have to make funding decisions. So they don't necessarily know the whole history of your museum or are familiar with all the work you've been doing. So this is your opportunity to really show that to them, to tell them those stories. I would also suggest is providing different examples for each. So sometimes we might get responses where the collections and the programming example are kind of the same thing, or the governance and the programming example are the same activity. I would really encourage you to share as much as you can. So try to make these all separate activities that really showcases what your museum is doing. So now I want to talk just in a little bit more detail about the Indigenous objects and materials and reconciliation question. So this part of this section was added in the last round of funding, so this 2024-25 cycle that we're in. And this really is in response to the TRC call to action number 67 that is basically asking museums in collaboration with Indigenous people to look at museum policies and best practices and look at how museums are working towards the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So this is also in fulfillment of collection management standard for the MAS number 24, that museums will maintain an inventory of all Indigenous artifacts in the collection and make it available to the MAS office and Indigenous communities upon request. So in 2022, the MAS did request all its member museums to provide a copy of their Indigenous objects inventory. And so in working towards that, in our last cycle, museums were asked to fill out a survey that the MAS had developed which was just basically getting a sense of who has Indigenous objects in their collections, where the inventories were at. And so if you received funding in 2024 and 2025, you have completed this survey. You do not need to do it again. I do want to note that Indigenous museums are exempt from this, so we do not have to do this question. But if you're a returning applicant, you would have received your year 2 funding upon completion, ensuring that survey was completed. If you're a new museum coming into the program, you do need to fill out the survey. There's a hyperlink here in the PDF, but it is also available in the online grant platform directly. Okay, now for this current application cycle, we are.
Have you turned on the makeup air, the furnace for this area at any time?
I think somebody needs to mute themselves.
A little bit, but not.
Yeah.
Okay, muted. So for the current application, we are asking museums kind of where you are in the progress of sharing that inventory with the MES. So if you have an inventory, has it been completed? Has it been shared? Great. But we do also understand that not everyone is there and want to note that the MES is providing assistance for this. For those of you who maybe have met Gabriel Lamarche, he can help identifying Indigenous materials in your collection, or you can discuss repatriation with him. His information is here in this slide, and again, it is also available in the online grant platform. And of course, we have Sarah, the museum's advisor, so she can help once you have your Indigenous material inventory complete and you want to share it with the MES, or if you have any other kind of collections questions, you can reach out to Sarah. So I just want to be clear, we're not necessarily expecting everyone to complete the step. We understand that this is a process. We just kind of want to know what your plans are and how you're working towards this if you have Indigenous objects in your collection. We do also understand there may be some barriers. So we want to learn from you if you're facing any, what's stopping you, or is there barriers you're facing in achieving this, and this will help us better support you in working towards this. So there is also a question I get sometimes about, well, we don't have Indigenous objects in collections. But even if you don't have Indigenous objects, we are looking at museums or wanting to see that work towards the TRC calls to action or reconciliation. So how are you integrating that into your programming or your museum or your governance? So those are a couple of questions that have changed since the last application. And other than that, most of the application has remained the same from the last iteration, from the last cycle. That was the main difference, was that question around Indigenous objects. So a little bit about the budget, because I know this is often where people can get hung up or have questions. And I just want to remind you that your budget really should align with the rest of your application. And this is often where assessors can have some of the biggest questions. So if your application is highlighting a new program and you're hiring new staff, but your budget really isn't showing that might be a red flag for them. So you just want to make sure that what you're saying in your application is what is the same story that your budget is telling us. And again, for stream 1, the budget document is embedded within the OGP application. So it will be on different pages. So you will see 6 separate pages, but there's just 1 page each for current year revenue and a current year expenses, year 1 revenue, year 1 expenses. For applicants, because I know a lot of museums have that January to December fiscal year, and you're being asked to fill this in November and December. We don't expect you to, jump into the future and tell us what your fiscal year is going to be at the end of December. Just provide projected amounts for your current year. We, of course, realize that. So just a little note here on the revenue side. So these are kind of our standard line items. So the SaskCulture Museum Grant Program. So this is what you're asked. This is what you received for that year 2 funding for your current year. And this is how it should be reflected in your financial documents. Ideally, it would say Sask Lotteries MGP. SaskCulture MGP is okay, but I'm still seeing some financial statements referring it to as an MAS grant or some granting program. We really do want to see it being identified properly in your financial documents. And that is something we're going to be paying a little bit more attention to. So keep that in mind for your financial years coming up. Okay, so the other standing categories are summer jobs, municipal funding, or self-generate. You can also have an other category right here. And then there's a blank line. So you can add as many additional lines or item lines as you want by just hitting this add new line and entering what it is in the amount. Say if you want to break out your self-generated between registration fees and fundraising. One thing to note is you do need to have a numerical value for all these blank white spots on the right-hand side. So even if you don't have summer jobs funding, you need to enter 0 here. I think that catches a few people and their budget doesn't balance or doesn't work and they can't submit it. Just remember, if you have a blank white space amount, there needs to be an amount listed, even if it's 0. And then same for the expenses. So we have salaries and benefits, eligible operating expenses, programming expenses, and your capital and fundraising costs, both of which are not eligible for our funding. You can still include them, but it just, our grant funding can't go towards those expenses. And same thing here, you can add additional lines if you would like. More information is always better, but it doesn't have to be every single line item. Just remember, you have to have an associated numerical value. Operating expenses, we would expect to see things like if you have rent or insurance, utility, or perhaps some minor maintenance costs would be considered operating expenses. And then capital and fundraising costs, we did add in the fundraising cost line here. It's always been ineligible, but I noticed some people were including it, not realizing it's not an eligible expense, so it's just been separated out. And a question I always get is, what's the difference between minor maintenance and capital? And that isn't always the easiest question to answer. But generally speaking, capital expenses are anything that adds value to your building or your space. So things like land purchases, new buildings, major repairs like a new roof, a new furnace system, all new windows. Maintenance is, smaller and things that will help extend the life of a building or make it look nicer. So, painting windowsills or fixing a few broken shingles as opposed to completely redoing it is some examples of minor maintenance versus capital expenses. And then we do have this box right here. And this is really important, especially if you need to tell that budget story. So if there isn't something that's really clear in the budget itself, say you're saving up a lot of money for a major capital expense in 3 years, but you haven't really alluded to that in the application, this is where you could put that information here. We've undertaken a fundraising campaign for $20,000. That's why we have such a high surplus. Okay. For stream 2 and 3, we are continuing on with the budget, the Excel spreadsheet. So what I've just talked about is stream 1, where the budget is embedded in the online grant platform. Stream 2 and 3 museums, you do have to download the Excel spreadsheet, save it to your computer, fill it out, and then re-upload it. And so, of course, what we're asking for here is your last audited financials. And so your amounts here should match your financial statement. So they should be the same. And if there's any reason why they don't, again, that's where you can include that information both in that budget box, but also over here in these explanatory notes. And then where you are in your current year, and then what your year one and your year two is going to be. And again, divide it up between revenue and expenses. And I did notice when I put this together, I forgot to take out the COVID relief funding line item. I'm assuming nobody's still getting COVID relief funding, so you can just ignore that going forward. So once you've finished your application questions and filled out your budget, you will get to the section in the application where it basically asks you to understand an acceptance of risks and conditions, and then comes the payment option. And we really are strongly encouraging all museums to sign up for electronic fund transfer or direct deposit. I think we're now in a rotating Canada strike. So we've had 2 Canada strikes, postal strikes this year. It has impacted our ability to get some checks out to museums who are still receiving checks. So we really want to see you get your funding. This is your money to do the good work that you're doing. We want to get it to you. EFT is the fastest way for us to do that. It goes directly into your museum's bank account. It also means checks don't get lost in the mail, they don't get misplaced, and then you can actually see when it gets deposited. So it is a very simple process. Once you are approved for the grant, if you're successful in the application, we will reach out to you and provide you with a link to connect and fill out an online form to get you signed up for EFTs. Now, just a quick word here about the follow-up report. I just have this and then a few grant tips, and then we'll be done. The follow-up report is also in that online grant platform, and then we ask some questions about your previous year. We want to know what your success and challenges are and whether you've had a change in plan. And then you are required to upload 2 financial documents. So this is in the follow-up report. Remember, this is now going to be happening in 2027. So when that comes up, we're going to ask you for your 2025 fiscal year, as well as your one, which will be your 2026. An updated budget that matches your financial statements. And just because we know things change, right? It's a whole year and a half later, sometimes maybe even getting close to 2 years later. And that's okay. The only thing that doesn't change is whatever your grant assessment amount was. So that's not what you asked for, but what you received is what will go with it. And that follow-up report is due 3 months after your financial year end. I know there are some museums that don't always have that financial document ready. Just email me and let me know, and we can grant you an extension until that is ready. So don't worry if your financial documents aren't ready and you can't complete this. Just reach out to us, keep us in the know, okay? And so just a few tips, specifically, some of these are about, this one is about the museum grant program. We do have 2 documents. We created MGP information for applicants this year. And that's just general information about the program, eligibility, the different streams, and some tips. And then we separated out the guidelines, which are very specific to the MGP program. And so this includes purpose, priorities, and a really good listing of eligible and ineligible expenses. So read these, even if you're returning, year after year. I always encourage people to, just refamiliarize yourself with the guidelines and this information. The documents are only a few pages each. It shouldn't take you very long to go through them. And often questions might be answered in there. If your question isn't answered in there, then by all means reach out to us and we'll have the answer or we'll find the answer for you. And then just to note, our grant application and our follow-up reports are all delivered through our online grant platform. And there are essentially 2 profiles in that platform. You will have your museum profile, and then you will have your own individual user profile. Museums that are currently in the system already have a museum profile. If you're a returning user, you will already have an individual user profile. And this is associated with your email. So your email is your username. And so if you have 3 or 4 emails, you want to make sure you're using the email that you originally used to create that user profile. If you're having troubles, reach out to Leo or Abiodun or even myself, and we'll get that sorted out for you. If that's what's keeping you from getting on the OGP and getting your application started, we can help you with that. There was email notifications sent out, I think, in September to all the existing museum grant users, applicants in our current system. So you should have had that link letting you know the grants are open. Now, if you're a new user coming in and working on an existing museum that's already receiving funding, we need to link your new user profile up to that museum profile. So if you're a brand new person with the museum, you can go in and you can create your user profile and then reach out to one of us and we'll get you linked up to the museum profile so you can access all the previous applications and follow-up reports and work on the new one. Now, if you're a new museum, of course, you need to create a new museum profile and your new user profile. Really strongly encourage all museums to have at least 2 people associated with the grant application. So you have your museum user profile and associated users, but each grant application also has whoever started it, and you can invite somebody else in to take a look at it. Partly because that helps you, right? You got somebody else looking at it, but it's also for some reason.
Could you call back in half an hour?
And you lose you lose access for some reason. There's somebody else there. So strongly suggest spending some time familiarizing yourself with the OGP if you're not familiar with it. And I am going to talk about the accessibility fund for those who maybe just really struggle with technology. That may help you, that may assist you, and I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So these are just some general grant writing tips. So this is not specific to MGP. It can be applied to most any other grants you're writing. And one thing to keep in mind is really identify your needs. So why is what you're doing important? What is the community need for it? And so I heard somebody say, well, we just want to keep the lights on. Well, that's really important, but it doesn't tell the story of why it's important. So keeping the lights on may be what you're doing, but why are you doing it? So think about that. And really suggest using that storytelling approach, the who, what, where, when, how, and why. Always a good tactic. Essentially, you want to make it easy for the volunteer peer assessors to understand your story and to have it connect with them. That's what I always say. Make it as easy as possible as you can for the assessors to understand what you want and why it's important. And so this helps is having that clear, concise writing with compelling language. Short, straightforward sentences are usually better than long, complicated ones. I tend to write long, complicated sentences, and now I'm going back and going, okay, I can cut this down into 4 different short sentences. That's what I'm working on doing. And it's easier for people reading, because remember, they're reading several applications, and what is important, what is special about yours. And then also using active voice is really good. So it's just a way of writing. I understand the benefits of using passive voice, but this is not a literary novel. You're trying to get your message across as clearly and concisely and specifically as possible. So instead of saying the car that was blue, it would just be the blue car. And then we do want to make sure that if your programming or your museum has activities or exhibits that are either ethnocultural, First Nation, Métis. We want to see involvement of those members of those communities in the process. We want to make sure that there's no tokenism or cultural appropriation. And while this can be time consuming, it's valuable and very rewarding work. And also something to think about more and more is the appropriateness of the cultural resource people that you're bringing in. So are they the right people to be bringing in and sharing that information in those stories? So kind of that nothing about us without us approach. And then letters of support are not needed for this grant application. So I just want to be really clear, we're not asking for letters of support. But for other grants where you do require letters of support, is making sure you have those, because they are very beneficial and can really strengthen an application, ensuring they're from the right organization or individuals, and that it's highlighting the connection to whatever project you're talking about. And then just remember to always get those 2 signatures. So the application itself does require 2 signatures. And any financial documents we require has to have 2 signatures. So something else to think about is your budget, making sure your calculations are correct. And they should be, because both the online grant and the Excel spreadsheet budgets self-calculate. So as long as you've got the numbers in there, you shouldn't have to worry about math. But you just want to make sure the information you've entered is correct. Make sure you have that proper request amount. So there's a place for it both in the online grant platform, but also in the budget. So just make sure those are the same amount. And again, not so much for this grant application because it is operational funding. We're not looking for estimates or quotes, but we do want realistic amounts. And for other grants where you do have to provide, budgeting estimates, I always recommend getting quotes. Some people are getting a good sense of what things really cost. The volunteer peer assessors understand museums, they understand the finances. So if something's way off, it'll be a bit of the red flag for them, either too low or too high. And then proofread. So we are not judging you on grammar, on spelling. I do want to be clear about that. It is the content of the application that is important, but it does help if it's easy to understand, if it isn't all one great big long sentence that runs on. So really encourage you to proofread it, or getting a second or maybe even a third person to look at it, because something that may make perfect sense to you may not come out as clearly on paper. I know that's happened to me several times. It just makes sense. Somebody else reads it and they're like, what are you talking about? So it's just that second set of eyes. Again, don't wait. Get planning. The deadline for streams 2 and 3 are coming up quickly. Stream 1 museums, you have a bit more time, but it's amazing how fast time flies. I encourage you to get started writing and pull together, especially for those stream 2 and 3 museums, any of your documents or any other support you want to highlight. There is opportunities throughout the online grant platform to add additional uploads. If you've got some great pictures or you got a news article, you can share those with us. And finally, reach out. We are here to help. Our goal is making sure your application is the strongest for your museum. So we want to make sure you get a good application in. We are not involved in the decision-making process. I want to be clear about that. That is the role of our volunteer peer assessors. And if there is adequate time, we can even potentially provide you some feedback on your application if we get it in early enough. Okay. And that kind of concludes that part of the presentation. I see I'm running very close to being almost out of time, so I'm very quickly going to talk about the Accessibility Fund. And this is a new fund that we have that provides support to organizations led by individuals experiencing barriers, something that might prevent them from applying to SaskCulture grant programs. And so support means anything from like creating an account in our online grant platform to completing or submitting a grant application or a follow-up report in the online grant platform. Barriers can be anything that's preventing you from doing that. So it can be, but is not limited to, things like being deaf or hard of hearing, being partially sighted or blind, if you're autistic or have neurodiverse symptoms or have other disabilities or illnesses, or if you face technology barriers or any other type of communication or language barrier that is restricting your ability to apply for and report on funding. So it is support to address those barriers, whether your application itself is successful or not. And so how it works is it's available to all of our SaskCulture funding programs. You simply put in a request. You can just send an email, or you can phone, or even talk to somebody in person. Ideally, you're going to contact the outreach consultant for that program. So for MGP, it would be myself. It does say 4 weeks before the deadline. I realize we're scooching up to less than that for MGP1. So if there are people who want or feel that this would be a good fund for them, reach out to me in the next couple of days and we can work on getting that. We'll sneak it in just under that deadline. But ideally, we do need 4 weeks before the deadline. You just have to answer a couple of questions to identify the barrier. I just want to note, we're not going to ask you any health questions. That's personal information. It's just addressing what the barrier itself is. And then you find a service provider and work with that provider to address the barrier. The service provider then invoices SaskCulture. They provide us with the service they provided, the hours and their rate, and then they get paid directly by SaskCulture. Okay. So that is something that may be of interest to members of this group. If you want more information about it in general, you can reach out to Tara Lee, or as I said, you can reach out to myself. And then just want to highlight, we do have some great resources. We have a website where, of course, you access your online grant platform, but we do have an events calendar. If you have events, you can share those through the events calendar. We also have a great organizational resources page, has information on things like grant writing, governance, reconciliation. I encourage you to check those out. You can sign up for our Engage magazine, which is published biannually and highlights the work of cultural leaders. And so this is both a print and online version. So some fun stuff coming with Engage. And sign up to our e-update. So this is a bi-weekly electronic newsletter that goes out, features news, of course, ever important jobs, volunteers, calls for interest, and grants. So that's always a good thing to connect with. And then probably one of the best resources in my mind is that outreach consultant, right? Our job is to help you. So reach out to us. We are here as a resource for you. And so with that, I am like right on my 60 minutes on the nose, I think, but I'm happy to stay around and answer questions. Here is contact information for all three of us. And I do also want to plug an opportunity. We rely on our community to serve as volunteer peer assessors for grant adjudications. So this might be something you want to consider, becoming a peer assessor. There are lots of benefits. I've listed them there. And there is an online application form. You can click it here. That'll take you. Our peer assessors are approved through our organization. Just to note, you will never assess your own application. So thought I'd better end with that in case somebody thought they could do that. So with that, the presentation is over. I will stop sharing my screen so I can get a sense of some of the questions. I see a few came in while we were talking. And I believe Angel, I don't know if I'm saying that right, has their hand up. So I will go with hands up first and then maybe try to answer some of the questions in the chat as we go on. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Angèle. It's very nice to
Angèle.
meet you. Yeah, in French it's oh. You've got to think oh, I guess. Angèle. I guess I have two questions, although I think you answered one already. To be very clear, being affiliated with an organization who normally applies for this grant does not disqualify you from being a peer assessor. It's just you won't have your own grant put in front of you.
Right. Yeah.
Got it. My meat and potatoes burning question here is, in the application portal, the intake right now, which as we all understand has a little different look and feel than an interim report, which we'll be doing a year and a half from now. But in this, there is a section about, I think it's in profile, or anyway, it's like the overview, how many staff you have, how many events you had, etc. Okay, I want to talk about events. It asks how many events, but then there's like a little info bubble underneath it, like a little, lowercase I, and it says, public events are open to the public or something like that. So if we don't include our classroom visits, when you're having school kids, like those kinds of events, it brings our event count down, which I feel is kind of a hit, like kind of taking a bruise. But I wouldn't feel so bad if there was another spot in the application where I could, go into detail about these class visits. And there isn't. I know there's an itty bitty spot about educational programming, but it's forward looking in the next 2 years, which is great. But how do I toot my horn about these great class visits from this year?
Okay, I think maybe in your program success, an example of your
I
program
can't hear you. I'm so sorry. Your voice is like fading in and out, but I did hear program success.
Yes, can you hear me now? Is that better? Yeah.
I mean, it's still fading in and out. Like I'm getting like 90% of it.
Okay, did anyone else have trouble hearing me?
Yeah, I think it's a little better now. It's better now.
Oh, okay, no. Yeah, so maybe right in that program success, hopefully that's coming through a bit better. It would be a good place to put that, and I'll double check the application and just see if there's a spot where you could add it into your activities, your numbers. Yeah.
All right, I'll just weave it in wherever the heck I can.
Brenda.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for sharing such great, useful information. Really appreciate it. My question is about follow-up reports. So from the 24-25, those 2 years, like I know we did the interim report, and then there's a final follow-up report.
No, there isn't. So
okay.
there is an interim report due for year one.
Yep.
And then essentially there is no follow-up report for your year two because we're into this next application cycle. So essentially we kind of use the application cycle as a check-in on your year two funding. And that is why we ask for your 2025 financial statements in the year one follow-up of the next cycle. So
Okay,
that's good. So there is no formal follow-up report for year two.
Okay, I was thinking I had to do both at the same time. So
no,
okay,
you don't.
Great.
No, you do not.
Thank you.
Make you do that. That would be terrible. Okay, is there any other hands up? Marilyn.
I posted in the chat, but this is my first time doing one of these grants. I'm just new to the Langham Museum, so I'm just wondering, for the budget part of the application for next year, am I putting in the budget for 2024 because that was a complete year, or am I putting in for 2025?
So you are going to do your 2025 will be your current year. Okay. Right. And 2024 would have been reported on in the follow-up report already.
Okay, so whatever I'm budgeting is for this year and just kind of not fudge, but for December, just kind of
Yes.
say this a projected budget then?
Estimated till the end of the year, correct?
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, yeah, and then you will have your budget, your anticipated budget for 2026 and 2027.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
perfect.
Thank
I
you
hope
so
that answered
much.
that. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and Angel, I don't think I said that right.
Close enough.
Okay, yes, I like the idea of supporting good and maybe bad examples. And absolutely, shame anyone, we would make that up. That is definitely something we're looking at. We just don't have probably the time to do it for this cycle, this intake, but something that we are working on. Yeah, for reference for people. I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
No, thank you for saying you're already on it. You beat me to it. And as I was going through this, what is super helpful I'm finding is these little prompts that, are staring you in the face, like right at that question, right? It's one thing to have like an applicant guide. That's fine. It's like a 20-page PDF, whatever, it's overwhelming. But to actually give you hints right by the boxes as you go, it's just so in your face exactly where you need it, when you need it. Like, it's golden. I love the prompts you have there. So that would even be good spots for little examples.
Perfect. And if people have suggestions on those prompts, by all means, send them to me. If you have something where you're like, oh, this would have helped clarify this. We're happy to get that information to make this a better process for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I saw Dorothy's hand up.
Oh, Dorothy. Okay, you're muted, Dorothy.
Is that better?
That is better.
Okay. I'm a little confused because I understood the budget was forward. So when we're filling this out for 20 now, wouldn't we be putting in our 2026 budget?
Yeah, you do. You need to put in your 2026 and your 2027 budget because it's a 2-year grant program.
And the financial statement is for back.
Correct, yeah. And because we don't have that year 2 follow-up, because of this is kind of our check-in on your year 2 of your current cycle. So that's why we want to know what your current year is, what your 2025 year is going to be like. Yeah. So does that answer your question, Dorothy? Is there anything else?
It was just that you were talking about the budget for 25 and it just confused it a little bit for me anyway.
Yeah. I could say your financials. So what are your financials for this year?
Yes.
Yeah. And I see somebody answered the question, Leo, thank you, about printing out the application form. So you can do that. I'm just looking at the questions. If we are applying, yes, so we answered that question, Marilyn. Oh, and moving up a stream, so thank you. The question about facilitating peer mentorship, that's certainly something we can think about and maybe discuss. And yeah, I guess, are there other questions? I realize I've kept everybody a little bit past our time period. As I say, always happy to provide more information. We're here to help you. I said, unfortunately, I'm going to be away. I say this and then I'm going away for a week and a half, but I will answer emails and phone calls when I get back. So if you do want to do anything immediately, I would suggest getting in touch with me early next week. I leave Wednesday, so I'm going to be in and out of the office tomorrow. But you can certainly give me a shout Monday or Tuesday. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for all the great work and for coming to this session. Always looking for feedback and more information on how to make it useful and helpful to you. And have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.